that the top domestic terrorism threat we face continues to be from racially motivated violent extremists and anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists. Can you explain how the tech companies, and a lot of this is of people who have been typically radicalized online, can you explain how the tech companies could be better partners in rooting out domestic violent extremism?
Well, some of this goes to the exchanges that we've already had about the encryption issue, and when individuals, we have found historically, move to discussing truly operational, actual violent activity, they tend to move to encrypted platforms, which if those encrypted platforms are not designed in a way to be responsive to a warrant, then that activity, just like the child exploitation we talked about earlier, would be beyond reach. So we need companies to work with us on that. So that's one. Second, the companies have their own terms of service and actions that they can take, and on their own platforms are actions that they could take to help reduce abuse. But most importantly, I think on social media platforms, we need people who are on those platforms, who are Americans who see threats of violence. Again, that's what this is about, threats of violence, to alert law enforcement if they see them.
Well, certainly we can do that, but as you say, just as with the reporting of hate crimes, et cetera, these are all very underreported. And I think that there are concerns about possibly limiting the liability protections under Section 230. Would that be another way to get these platforms to pay attention to content on their platforms?
Well, without weighing on specific legislative proposal, what I would say is that these are gigantic companies now with all kinds of activities, some very positive, some very negative, that happens on their platforms. And just like any industry, it makes sense to me that they should take responsibility for what happens on their platforms. Their duties, unlike ours, unlike this committee's, their duties are to maximize profit for the shareholders. And there's nothing wrong with that being their duties, but that's a very different responsibility than all of us have to protect the American people.
It does sound as though that we need to make some changes to Section 230 liability protections, and I think we need to go there. Let me turn to another important issue. Sex trafficking remains a real issue in Hawaii and to other Native peoples. And in Hawaii, for example, the sex trafficking disproportionately impacts the Native Hawaiian community to the point where Native Hawaiian women and girls represent 67 to 77% of sex trafficking victims and 37% of child trafficking cases in Hawaii. And earlier this year, the FBI launched Operation Not Forgotten to help solve cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people. I think that is a really important step for the FBI to take. And prior to that, you also have in place Operation Cross Country, which is a 13-year program highlighting some of these issues. Can you tell us a bit more about what these programs do and what you hope to accomplish through these programs?
Well, so these programs are designed to both rescue victims of human trafficking and to take down the predators who engage in the human trafficking. And we take a very victim-centered, victim-focused approach. So in addition to rescuing the victims and arresting the predators, our victim services personnel try to engage with the victims to connect them up to social services and things like that, so that we recognize that it's a long road of recovery for them even after they're rescued from the trafficking itself, and we're trying to help get them on the right path that way. Part of the reason things like Operation Cross Country are kind of combined the way they are is to raise awareness for victims and witnesses and deterrence for predators.
I know that Operation Cross Country resulted in the finding of some 6 missing children in Hawaii. I've asked you this before regarding focusing on Native Hawaiian women and girls who are trafficked, and is Operation Not Forgotten in Hawaii?
Is it in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, does it,
I think Operation Not
Presence in
Forgotten Operation Not Forgotten if I recall the name correctly, there is very specific operations in Hawaii that our Honolulu field office and division are conducting, and they do some great work in the human trafficking space, and I'm proud of the work they've done for your community, your affected citizens, your constituents of the state of Hawaii.
thank you, I appreciate the effort, and I'm glad that some of my colleagues have asked you about what more we can do regarding the rise in anti-Semitism in our country, especially on our college campuses. Thank you for whatever you can do to assist in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Rono. Senator Holy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, thank you for being here. I noticed with interest in your written testimony that you said, and I'm quoting you now, the FBI uses all tools available at its disposal to combat domestic terrorism, which now apparently includes the crime of being Catholic. Let's talk a little bit about the FBI's egregious targeting of Catholic Americans. You have repeatedly been asked about the memo generated by the Richmond field office, we now know in collaboration with multiple other field offices, about recruiting sources in Catholic churches. You have repeatedly said that no human sources were approached. This is you on July the 12th in the House. You were asked directly by Jim Jordan, do you think that priests ought to be approached to give information on parishioners? You said, no, sir, no, sir. You went on to say, we do not recruit, open, or operate human sources. We do not report on religious organizations. You went on to say, this product, meaning the Richmond memo, has not resulted in any investigative action. But now we know that, in fact, FBI agents did approach a priest and a choir director to ask them to inform on parishioners. So were you lied to when you gave this testimony, or were you lying to Congress?
Neither. So your question conflates two different things. There's the intelligence product itself, which the Richmond field office created. It was written by, as our inspection found, by analysts in Richmond, reviewed by people in Richmond, and captioned Richmond field office product. Separately from that, there was an investigation of a specific individual who was amassing Molotov cocktails and posting about killing people, and it does not surprise me that there were people who knew that subject in that investigation, that is the guy building the Molotov cocktails and trying to kill people, that people talked to the witnesses who knew that person, and I think the product, the Richmond intelligence product, which cites that investigation, is actually pretty transparent about exactly what I just said.
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, the only reason we know this is a whistleblower has come forward and told the House under oath that the FBI went and interviewed priests and choir directors in the Richmond area. The House goes on to say that the FBI has repeatedly refused to disclose this information. The only reason we know it is because a whistleblower came forward with it. Just like the only reason we know about this memo is because a whistleblower came forward with it. How many other parishes around the country have priests or choir directors been approached? By the way, are Catholic choirs now, are they breeding grounds for domestic terrorism? Is this your latest theory? How many other parishes have FBI agents approached priests and choir directors to ask about parishioners?
Look, Senator, we do not and will not conduct investigations based on anybody's exercise of their constitutionally
You
protected
have done
religion.
so, and your memo explicitly asks for it. Your memo labels traditional Catholics as racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists in need of investigation. You have a list of churches, a list in the memo. You've repeatedly said we don't target churches, we don't list churches. They're listed in the memo. So how many other parishes have you gone to talk to choir directors, for heaven's sake?
As I've
Know the answer to that question.
No, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you that we don't investigate people for their exercise of their constitutionally protected religious expression. That particular intelligence product is something that as soon as I saw it, I was aghast. I had it withdrawn.
Really, you were aghast?
I was.
Oh, really? And
Yes,
what
sir.
have you done about it? Did you fire the people who wrote it?
No, I had it withdrawn.
Have you fired anybody involved in it?
Senator, if you would give me a chance to answer
That's a
your
yes or a
question.
no. It's not hard. Have you fired anyone involved in the writing of that outrageous memo, about which, frankly, you've repeatedly misled the public? Yes or no?
The individuals involved in
Have
that
you
product
fired
were
anyone?
just a minute, were not found to have engaged in any intentional or bad faith conduct. And in fact,
Really?
Senator, a number of the individuals
answer is no.
involved in writing that product in the Richmond office were themselves Catholic. So the notion
Oh, I see.
that
So
they were
therefore
targeting their own faith
Oh, so they
is
have a get out of
nonsense.
jail free card. I see. I
They-
see. So you're
I did
immune
not
and
say
they're
that.
immune. So we shouldn't ask questions about it. You haven't done a darn thing. You haven't fired anybody. In fact, what the House found is, what is it? You admonished them. They were admonished. And their respective supervisors were told to engage with the Human Resources Division to ensure that deficiencies are addressed. Oh, well, I feel much better. They've been sent to bed without food. Good heavens, Director. This is one of the most outrageous targetings. You have mobilized your division, the most powerful law enforcement division in the world, against traditionalist Catholics, whatever the heck that means. And you're just told us you have not fired a single person. I mean, here, it gets worse. Your Richmond field office, they thought there was nothing wrong with this. The House interviewed the head of the Richmond field office. He testified. It's all here in the public report. I refer you to it, pages 12, 13, 14. He testified he saw no problem with this. He said he thought it was fine. In fact, we have internal memoranda of the members of the field office high-fiving. One peer reviewer, another member of the field office wrote, "I think this is a great product. I really enjoyed the read." Do you have a problem with systemic bigotry against Catholics in the FBI?
No.
What are you going to do about this? Are you going to fire these people or not?
Those individuals have all been admonished, and it is all going into their,
Admonished.
if you would let me finish my answer, it is all going into their annual performance reviews, which has direct impact on their compensation, among other things.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. I see. So the 60 million American Catholics who now learn that your FBI has recommended that priests be recruiters and informants, your FBI has gone to priests, choir directors, but we're to feel better because you've admonished them for their wrongdoing.
You again are conflating two different
No, I'm
things.
not.
When
I am
we are-
taking your testimony where you said you do not. You said categorically, you said we do not go to priests and ask them about their parishioners. You said we do not. You didn't say we haven't. You didn't say we won't. You said we don't. It turns out you do, and you kept it from the public. You deliberately misled Congress about it, and the only reason we know about it is because a whistleblower came forward.
I just
That's the truth.
fundamentally disagree with your
Well,
characterization.
there's no characterization. The facts are the facts. And I fundamentally resent the fact that you have violated, if not the spirit, if not the letter, certainly the spirit of the First Amendment, and used your law enforcement agency against Catholics in this nation. Let me ask you about one other thing. Last time you were here, you had to leave early to take a jet to your vacation in the Adirondacks. Now, let me just ask you this. A whistleblower tells us that you also maintain a home in Atlanta to which you fly on a regular basis. I'm told by this whistleblower from the FBI that you use the FBI jet to make that travel. Is that correct?
All of my travel, personal or work-related, is required to be done on FBI planes. That is longstanding policy, goes back well over a decade.
I'll take that as a yes. The whistleblower also says that you regularly require the jet, which is based in Manassas, to be flown to D.C. because, and I quote now, Wray doesn't like to sit in traffic. Is that accurate?
No, that's not accurate.
He also says that you pay only the lowest cost commercial ticket for that Atlanta to DC trip, which is, I don't know, what, $200 or something? When, of course, it costs $20,000, $30,000 to operate the jet. Is that correct?
The reimbursement that I provide is reimbursement that is set by OMB policy, and I follow that policy, which goes back over a decade, and I